Podcast is sponsored by the Christian Standard Bible. The goal of the CSB is to be faithful to the original languages without sacrificing clarity, all while maintaining both accuracy and readability. With the beautiful designs and multiple study Bible options, everyone from adults to teens and even children can find a CSB Bible that they enjoy. Learn more at csbible.com. Again, that's csbible.com.
Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations about faith, culture, and society. I'm your host, Chris Fuller.
And this is Marc Hyde.
And on today's episode, we have a special guest for you guys,
Ooh.
Beth Guckenberger. I hope I said that right.
think
From
you did.
Back2Back Ministry. It's going to be a great time talking to her and learn more about Back2Back. So, Marc, are you ready to dive into this?
Let's go.
Let's go.
I just recorded you saying that.
Did you? Sweet. Awesome.
We're not doing a Would You Rather
we're not
tonight
doing
because
it.
we have an interview.
Well, that's all right.
That's
but,
good.
Yeah, so we got Beth on. We want to try to get to that as soon
Definitely.
as
I have to make an
possible.
apology, though. This is the third week in a row where I've had a cough that I can't shake.
Yeah, I've still
Not
got
COVID.
I've
It's
got-
not COVID.
I've got
I
a
tested
linger.
negative.
I've got a linger of one. But tonight we're not even drinking any coffee.
No, we're
It's-
not.
It's one of those rare occasions again.
Not,
We're
it's
not
not
doing
rare. It's rare for me. I would say it's more rare for me to not drink coffee than it is for you. Because normally you drink a coffee on the first episode we record, and then you have like your your bubbly.
That's true. But tonight I'm drinking a apple
What are you
cinnamon tea. I have a watermelon flavored water, and then another sparkling strawberry cucumber from AHA.
What did you do? Bring the whole fruit cart with
I
you?
did. That's what I do, bro. I'm still recovering from my cold, so I'm trying to keep things
That is
warm
true.
and just lots of water.
Well,
What are you
dude,
drinking tonight?
I drink name brand crap up in here. So my family, we actual LaCroix people. So
LaCroix.
I have kiwi sandia. I don't know. It's kiwi watermelon,
So it's
and this crap is good. This stuff is
What's
so
this
good.
other one you got
And then
here?
that's the staple Marc
Oh,
Raz,
yeah.
Raz Cranberry.
you love those.
I love the Raz Cranberry. But so no coffee now, but we got to talk about it though.
We've got
Brew
to
It
talk
Forward Coffee Co. We have our next subscription in the mail. I was told.
so excited.
We're getting Costa Rican blend
Yes.
in the mail. So
We
but
had
if-
Guatemalan this last
we had
time.
Guatemalan,
right?
and it was
really
good.
good. That's the one we drank a couple weeks back.
I am going to say, though, Honduran still has my vote for the best
Yeah,
South American
it's-
coffee, though.
Well, see, I'm partial.
Partial to
I like
what?
it when I roast my Mexican coffee, which you like.
That's Central American, bro.
That's true.
That's
That's
Central
true.
America.
But my all-time favorite still is the Peruvian.
You were vibing with the
Still
Peruvian.
love that Peruvian.
But so we have Costa Rican in the mail for
We do.
Brew
I'm
It Forward,
excited.
Brew It Forward Coffee Company. So brewitforwardcoffeeco.com.
Right.
Right now, if you go to the website and use the coupon code RTC when you make one purchase, not a subscription, but just one purchase,
Single purchase.
they'll give you 10% off just because they love the show.
That's awesome.
And I do want to say this because a lot of people are like, oh, what happens? Do you get a lot of kickback? Guys, we get no money from this.
They send us coffee.
They send us coffee. They are a ministry, though, that is all about putting all the proceeds back into, I would just say, underprivileged kids. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of the money goes to a halfway house, Bethany House out in Pennsylvania, Ronald McDonald
McDonald,
Foundation, women pregnancy care centers, boys clubs, all these different ministries that are honestly. We're probably going to talk about some tonight, just of what we
Maybe,
can
yeah.
do for the widow and the orphan.
Right.
That's where all the money goes towards with this coffee company.
Right.
So if you want to have some really good coffee that doesn't suck and it does not taste like Folgers and it does not cost like the bougie,
And
bougie stuff.
like I said a couple
can
weeks
do
ago,
it.
it tastes very similar to the way I roast. It's that nice medium roast with the nice velvet and the aftertaste. And
And Jared literally roasts it, bags it, ships it
Yeah.
in less than a day.
Yeah, it was pretty.
It was
pretty
fresh
phenomenal.
as it comes,
Yep,
bro.
it was pretty good. So I'm looking forward to it.
I am looking forward to it. We already warned the people. We're not doing
No, would you rather? So
would you
we're
rather?
gonna jump right into the reviews because we're trying to get to Beth as soon as possible to give her.
Yep,
as
yep.
much time
So
to talk about
last
Back-to-Back.
one, my favorite name so far has been DJ Mays.
DJ
Like,
Mays.
I know his name is just DJ, but we call him DJ Mays.
What if it's a girl? I just want to throw it out
Ah,
there.
crap. Like Full House with DJ?
Yeah, exactly. I just thought of that. I'm like, wait a second.
Wow.
This is why we shouldn't say genders for each name because
We already got in trouble once.
How many times have we screwed that up?
Very, very much. But this is from Cameron. Angels 13. I don't know.
Sure.
But Cameron, Hi, my name is Cameron. I'm 29, and I'm a recovering drug addict that has accepted Christ into my life, and I live in a Christian ministry in Northeast Florida. They teach me Reformed theology and are Baptist, and I've been listening to myself to stay grounded and sober-minded, and I want to thank you very much for your podcast and all your topics. God bless, Cameron. And he even did a little verse, John 8:36. Do you know what John 8:36 says?
No, but you should pull it up.
I am going to pull it up really quick. And so tell people how they can leave a review while we do it.
We've been in John 8 recently here at church, but in the later part. I think it's the one where Jesus is talking about how he is the bread, I think, but I'm not
Is that what you're going with?
I'm going with he's talking about he's the bread. What was
Nope, so if the sun sets you free, you will be free indeed. What's King James?
Maybe I'm thinking chapter 6 of John. I can't remember. We're in either chapter 6 or chapter 8 here at church right now, going through a study of...
Light of the world is 8.
What's
the adulteress forgiven is beginning of John chapter 8.
What's the name of our sermon series right now?
He said what?
He said what?
Can I just say, when Pastor Scott sent me that title to make the graphic, I'm like, dude, you're just asking for bad jokes. You're asking for friends jokes.
I told Scott, I said,
The Office jokes.
I'm reading this and I'm like, I could see Mark in this like 100%. He said, what?
I was giggling when he sent that to me. But either way, Cameron, thank you for leaving us a review.
Appreciate
and if you have not left a review on Apple Podcasts, we want to encourage you to do this because check this out. Every time you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, that tells, the big wigs over at Apple that
the algorithms
that we're serious, that we actually are growing and people want to listen to this content. A lot of you guys follow us on Spotify. Keep sharing. Keep hitting it up. The more you listen, the more people can find us on Spotify. But if you listen on Apple Podcasts, we would love it if you leave us a review.
And don't forget, if you leave a review, go ahead and reach out to us, either DM, PM, email, text, whatever you're going to do, your preferred method.
Snail mail.
Yeah, I mean, we don't care.
But they don't know our address.
Well, they kind of do because we're a registered business now, but that's beside the point. But get a hold of us, and we will send you a mini swag bag.
If I fail, because I know I failed on at least 2, and I don't remember who, hit me up so I can resend you back one out.
We'll get you little minis. We turned it over to Janelle, and she is way more responsible at that than we are.
Our project fulfillment services.
Yes,
so.
She's like the Amazon of the RTC
but
family.
Speaking of Janelle, we got to talk about her in this episode.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. So why don't you do the intro, bro?
So Janelle, actually, when Janelle and I met, she was going to a church here on the west side of South Bend called Riverside, and she's friends with the pastor and the pastor's wife, Keith and Shelley Walaka, and she actually went on a mission trip with Back2Back. I think down in Monterey, I believe, is where she said she went to Mexico.
Oh, cool.
And so she's like, hey, it would be really cool. I've listened to you guys with little friends from Paraguay, from the Frerichs down in Peru.
Andrew Wood with Knoxville Hope.
Coat, we've talked to Coat. We've had all these awesome interviews. She's like, we should see if we can get Beth on from Back2Back to kind of share the story of Back2Back and talk about the cool things that that ministry is doing. And I'm like, can you reach out for us? Because you're
a lot nicer than we are.
We are not as good with our words as she is.
We're good. See, the thing about the podcast is we get an hour to say a lot of words, but she's better at succinct words.
She's very good at thinking and like typing. And we talk a lot. We try to do the best we can, but we're not always the best. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's get her on here. Beth, are you with us?
I am.
There we go.
Great to see you guys.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much for being with us today on our podcast.
Can I just say it makes me happy that we have a guest by the name of Beth because I can't forget her name.
So easy to remember now.
I love it. And this is the second Beth to talk about the topic we're talking about tonight. So I'm excited about it. Go for it.
So Beth, not real quick, as long as you want, Beth. I'm just saying this could be a 3-hour long episode, and I don't care. We're just going to roll with it, whatever you want, Beth.
Well, you can roll with it, but man, I'm hungry. I'm going to be real hungry by the end of this.
Beth, tell us a little bit about what is Back2Back.
Yeah, we're an international orphan care organization. We employ about 350 folks in 9 locations around the world, and we work specifically with orphan and vulnerable children, but you can't really love the orphan and vulnerable child in isolation. You need to love their at-risk mom and their marginalized community and their local church and their, all the things that go around the ecosystem of a child. So we work in all of those areas in lots of places around the world, and we've been doing it about 25 years.
What's some of the places and locations?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. International. Wow.
We're in Jos, Nigeria, Hyderabad, India. We're in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. We're in the Dominican Republic. We're in 3 places in Mexico: Quintana Roo, Sinaloa, and Nuevo Leon. And we're also have a work here in the United States in the inner city of Cincinnati.
Oh, wow.
Now, did it start in Cincinnati, or where did it start?
We started in Monterrey, Mexico in 1997. My husband and I moved there with our savings account and just a dream of maybe starting really just serving for a year. We had hoped maybe in the course of a year, we would learn the language, build some relationships, understand a little bit more about the hurt child, possibly start a foundation. We did not have a vision for the organization that we run today. We certainly had a much shorter vision than that. And but as soon as we got there, we realized God had been loving on the orphan a long time before we ever got there. And it was just about listening to him, partnering with him, and directing traffic. And that's what we've been doing ever since.
Wow. So can you kind of go into a little bit of the story of like how you and your husband met and what drove you to the decision to even take your life savings and
Let's say,
and
yeah,
go
who
down
just
there?
goes to Mexico with life savings? That's risky business, man.
We met in high school through the Ministry of Young Life. We went off to college at Indiana University. There we got involved with the Ministry of Campus Crusade for Christ, or Crew. Every chance we could, we got on airplanes and went to international locations with them. After we graduated from IU, we then had the summers free because we were teachers, and we began to take our local youth ministry from our own local church in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is our hometown. We took them on mission trips to Mexico. And the summer of 1996, this was probably the 3rd or 4th summer we had done it in a row. The summer of 96, we were on a really bad mission trip. Like we were pretty much painting this wall from blue to green. Pretty sure the year before we'd painted it from green to blue.
Oh,
And,
goodness.
Oh, no.
We did have the mission trip once with our students. We're like, we just weeded this whole parking lot. We have to do it again. So, yeah, I've been there. Yep.
Yeah. So then the second to last day, I just looked at my husband, Todd, and was like, I can't paint one more day. And he said, I don't know what to tell you. Do you think that maybe this city has an orphanage? Because we had been to the country of Albania and had served in an orphanage there once. And I was like, I don't know, but it sounds better than painting. So we left our students in the hands of very responsible adults. And then we just started to say the word orphan with a Spanish accent, like El Orfano, El Orfanatorio, El Orfanagorio. And the cab driver took us to a orphanage and left us there. And I wasn't even sure if we knew the name of the street that church was on or if we had enough pesos to pay somebody to take us back. But we knocked on the front door of this orphanage and through some very bad Spanish said to them, we had $200 US, 25 able-bodied high school kids, and 1 complete day on our trip. And if they had access to those resources, what would they do? They told us that the front windows were all broken, which we could see, and that the kids hadn't had meat in over a year. So the next day we came back with some windows and some hamburgers. And Todd went off to fix the windows, and I was serving the hamburgers. And after a while, he came over and was watching me and pointed out this little preschooler. And I said, oh my gosh, she's so cute. And he said, well, you know, she's gotten 5 hamburgers, right? And you know that no preschooler can actually eat 5 hamburgers. So why don't you follow her and find out where all the food is going? Mm-hmm. So I did. I followed her, and I didn't know where she was leading me, but I could tell we were going somewhere. And we ended up in the doorframe of her dorm room, and I could see from where I was standing that she and all her buddies were all helping each other lift up their mattresses, and they were sticking their burgers underneath them.
Aww.
And we just sat there and thought about all the people we knew who'd buy hamburgers for an orphan if they only knew how to do it. So that was kind of the impetus event. The next day we flew back to Cincinnati, and really on the outside our life looked the same, but nothing was ever actually the same again. And we have 11 children now, but at the time we had no children.
Whoa, back up. So,
what? 11 children?
We have 11 children. Yes.
I was just complaining that I have 7. I have 7. I was just complaining how tired I was earlier.
What's the age ranges of your kids?
We have 4 boys and 11 girls, and they range in age from 18 to 35. Wow. So, yeah. Anyways, we didn't have all those kids to spend money on. So we ended up saving one of our salaries for a year. And at the end of that year was the summer of 97. We just pointed our little car south from Cincinnati and moved to Monterey. And we ended up living there the next 15 years, but I certainly had no idea that's what was going to happen.
Now, did you learn Spanish before you went down the second time, or did you guys just go down with a translator? Or, I mean, I'm sure,
Nothing.
Google Translate wasn't quite what it was.
Just learned on the fly.
Yeah, no. I studied French for 9 years. I was like, where was Jesus in the 7th grade when I had to pick those 2 tracks? And definitely we had no translator. We just had a lot of trial and error.
Wow.
And you get kind of desperate when you need to talk. So we figured it out.
So what did you guys do when you went down? Did you guys just find another orphanage to get working with? Did you just open your doors to your home? Like, what were the next steps?
Yes. I mean, the goal that year was to say yes as often as possible. So we said yes to any time anybody wanted to get together. We said yes anytime somebody said, I heard of an orphanage over here, you should check it out. We just said yes. We got on the phone and invited everybody we'd ever met to visit us, even though we didn't even know exactly what they do. We prayed that first year 50 people would come. But at the end of that first year, we'd had over 350 people.
Wow.
And we realized there's something God wants to do. He's just looking for someone who'll help kind of navigate his kids. So that's actually how it all started. Pretty naively, pretty short-sighted. I always say we were underprepared and immature and ill-equipped, but God loves to use people like that.
Right, but can we lean into that a bit? Because I remember, in college, there's a sermon I'll never forget, and it was the sermon about Moses with the staff in his hand, and God just said, what's in your hand? And I'll use what's in your hand. And he used the staff of Moses to transform the entire people of Israel. And then more than even just that, you look at Jesus, and he sent out his disciples in groups of 2 with just the cloaks on their back and the staff in their hands, and they're like, what are we going to do? He goes, I don't know. You'll know when you get there, I guess. And, it seems like so many times where a lot of conversations we've had with people, they didn't have these grandeur trust funds that were funding these ministries. It was just people saying yes to the next step that God had for them. Now, I'm sure those steps aren't easy.
Yeah, one of the reasons I like sharing the origin is because if I just told you today kind of our operating budget and our programs and the opportunities we've had and the reach, you can maybe get confused that people get credit for that, but there's just no way. I mean,
right.
The beginning, this is before the internet. So I bought a book on how to move to another country, and it said to take cash in small denominations so you can easily translate it and exchange it. So we took our whole savings account in what was a traveler's checks to Mexico, and they were like in our backpack. I mean, we didn't have the right kind of citizenship or visa status in order to open a bank account. So we just carried our traveler's checks with us.
Wow.
The 8th day I was there, I lined up in the bank to turn those into pesos, which we were going to just store at our house and use all year long as it lasted. And this lady was talking to me through the glass. Like, I now know she was saying to me, tienes que firmar tu nombre aquí en la línea, por favor, ponte la nombre en la línea, por favor. Like, she was giving me good instructions, but I didn't know any of her language. And she returned the traveler's checks back to me under the glass that was separating us. And I said to Todd, if these things don't turn into pesos, we can't even go back to Ohio. Like, I shoved them back to her. She shoved them to me. She got slow and loud and was screaming. But one word she said, I thought I had learned that week, nombre. So I grabbed this pen and paper and I wrote the word nombre that I heard her say, and I showed it to her through the glass, and she pointed at the line at the bottom of the checks and was like, yeah. And so I picked up my pen, and on every line at the bottom of those checks, I wrote the word nombre, which of course she was inviting, that's Spanish for name. She was inviting me to sign those checks. I didn't sign my checks. I just wrote the word name on it.
Right.
And one of my favorite verses is Zechariah 4:10, which says, do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. I think God was just looking for us to say yes, and the rest of it he was going to help us all figure out, because we did not know anything.
Wow.
Now, to lean into the beginning of the ministry, if you don't mind me, before you move on, where did the name Back2Back come from?
Praise the Lord. We knew early enough in this. There's a lot of things we did not know in the beginning about this kind of work. But one thing we knew is that we didn't want to come in thinking like we had answers to anybody's problems. My heavens, we knew enough to know that we didn't have that. We wanted to stand alongside our back-to-back nationals who had good solutions already for orphaned and vulnerable children, and just strengthen them, just come alongside of them in any way. So from the very beginning, our vision has been to empower and partner with nationals.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's awesome. Well, I want to dig a little bit more into what Back2Back does with the orphan care. You guys do something called holistic orphan care. What can you explain to
I've never heard of
and
holistic
Mark,
orphan
who've never
care.
heard that, what that is?
Yeah, in the beginning, that first year, all we could really see were physical needs, like kids who hadn't been vaccinated and roofs that were leaking and kids who didn't have protein and shoes that didn't fit. And so really, honestly, the whole first year, that's almost all we did, was just met physical needs of orphans in orphanages and some community centers. And then after about a year, our language caught up and it was like, well, we better make sure they know we're doing this in the name of Jesus, so they don't like us more than they like Jesus. He gets credit. He's the giver of all good gifts. So for a while, we thought that was kind of the magic sauce. Like you meet physical needs and you do it in the name of Jesus. And that's how you can earn the right to share gospel and gospel truths. But then it was a couple of years, maybe 3 or 4, that we were realizing the kids we loved were leaving orphanages. Really, I now know all around the world, pretty much age out kids around 15.
Wow. And that was the issue with Paraguay. And that's what Little Neighbors is trying to fix down there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a common problem. And even though they're chronologically 15, because of the trauma they've experienced, they're more like 10, 11 at that point, not equipped to take care of themselves or the little families that they're starting to create. And we were watching them find each other outside, make babies they couldn't take care of, bringing those babies back to the children's homes. And our tagline at the time was, we provide care for today and hope for tomorrow. And I was saying to my husband, I mean, 10,000 years from now, we got that kind of hope going on, but we don't have the kind of hope in terms of the rest of their life. And so at that point, we started to add an educational component to all of our programming. So we began to take kids who grew up in orphanages all the way through eventually their bachelor's degree in college.
Oh, wow.
And we thought for sure that was the secret sauce. Like, okay, meet physical needs, do it in the name of Jesus, break generational poverty by sending them into education. That started to get a lot of attention. I talked to the president of our country, and then we graduated. One of our first graduates from college, an engineer, he got this fabulous job, and he came to dinner one night 6 weeks after he started to tell us he was going to quit. And we were like, why are you going to quit? You have such a great job. And he's like, well, there's this guy and he follows me around all the time. He's driving me crazy. All he tried to do is tell me what to do. And my husband was like, is he your boss? And he goes, yes, I can't stand him. And we looked at each other and realized that we had graduated a well-educated emotional train wreck, that we hadn't adequately addressed in his life issues of authority or men, and that the trauma that he had experienced as a child was now coming back and getting in the way of his potential for success and emotional intimacy. So then we're like, okay, back to the drawing board. It's more than physical, more than spiritual, more than educational. What does it look like to holistically raise a child? And so we now have something called the 5-Point Child Development Plan, which meets the needs of all the children we serve in all the countries we serve, spiritually, physically, educationally, emotionally, and socially. And that's what holistic childcare looks
Wow.
like.
And that's evolved since the beginning, it sounds like. Now, can I ask how many years it took for you guys to create this entire, I don't want to say beast of a program, but it sounds like it's huge.
Yeah, probably almost 10, to be honest. And we made pretty brochures in the meantime, and we demonstrated what we thought was success in the meantime. But that's one of the reasons I like to encourage people to stay in the field that God calls them in, because you just continue to learn. I mean, we're constant learners. The way that we do ministry this year is different than the way we did it certainly last year, and that was different than the year we did it, different than the way we did the year before, because when you are growing and maturing in Christ, he's constantly giving you more of his mind share, more of the mind of Christ. And that then you recognize how you can do things with more quality or richer or stronger or healthier. And so just always trying to course correct.
Yeah. And with these 5 different characteristics, is it more the fact of your ministry has trained people on the ground to do it? Or is it more, because I have a lot of kids. Well, I have 7 kids. doesn't beat 11. But 5 of those kids were adopted out of foster care, and they were all born addicted to drugs in some way, shape, or form. So we're working on all the stuff you just talked about, and with therapists and whatnot. But with us, it's not like we're working with a church or a Christian organization to meet the betterment of the kids. We're working with, doctors and therapists and all these other government agencies that we're required to because of the nature of the adoptions. But just, this isn't a Christian service. So are you guys working with just your own internal people, or is this more of partnering with the government to come alongside these kids too?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's another thing that's evolved. Once upon a time, we staffed every position ourselves, but you can't scale to meet the need without partnering alongside of government. So we now do quite a bit of partnership. In fact, in the area of trauma, as we began to address areas of trauma and take some of the best information that was out there coming out of universities, good research that's happening in academia about the areas of the brain and trauma in kids. And we were putting it through our faith filters, our biblical understanding of scripture. And we were meshing that together, training our own staff to be with our kids in those best trauma-informed practices. We began to see extraordinarily dramatic results. And we were like, oh my gosh, we cannot keep this to ourselves. So we began to present that information probably as early as 10 years ago at conferences and in other orphan care organizations. And as we began to share it with other people, we just started developing curriculum and training people. And today that's in over 100 countries and serving hundreds of NGOs.
And it just started because you and your husband, with virtually no pesos, went down to Mexico.
Yes, actually. But I mean, it's now has, hundreds and hundreds of hands in it. It's certainly grown much, much bigger than that original origin. But that we spinned off an organization a couple of years ago called Trauma Free World, and Trauma Free World rolls up into Back2Back Ministries. But it was much easier to go into Muslim countries and partner with U.S. public schools when we were able to have a trauma-specific organization that has both a faith-based curriculum as well as a kind of faith-neutral curriculum that still teaches that fabulous trauma understanding through a biblical perspective, but without overt Christianity. And now we've gotten to partner, literally all over the world with that. And I hope, we know that for a fact, the CDC and World Health Organization in 2019 published that of the 2 billion children on the planet, that 50% of them, or 1 billion children, have experienced trauma. And the only way we're going to turn that story around is if we put a safe adult in the life of every child. But even once a safe adult gets put in the life of every child, they need to know what to do. As you know, parenting children from hard places is it's counterintuitive and it's extraordinarily difficult. And we have to really put tools in the hands of adults so they'll stay in the story.
I'm speechless, man.
Wow. Yeah.
Goodness.
I guess what's one of the success stories that you'd feel comfortable talking about that a child that has come through your holistic program, the 5 points that you guys have now, and come out the other side of it?
Oh gosh, there's lots of them. One of them I just was talking about today, though. I met him when he was probably 3 or 4 at a children's home, an orphanage. He grew up in that orphanage until he was 15. At 15, he moved from that partner children's home of ours onto our direct ministry campus, where he lived with a foster family and went through high school, which is tuition-based, private-based high school, and then on to graduate with a degree from college. He graduated this last May. But while he was in high school with us, his house parents were like, this kid has a lot of energy and we need to figure out healthy ways for him to burn it off.
Yep.
And so they enrolled him in athletics. First, he was a biker. He participated in bike races, and then he started to swim and eventually run and became a triathlete. And as he continued to compete, he excelled. He won the Mexican Nationals 2 years ago, and this month is in Europe representing Mexico in the World Cup. And it's just very exciting, in part because every time he gets on a platform, which is all the time,
right, and
there's press there, he talks about his origin story and how God sent people to intervene in his life and change the trajectory of it. And that's probably, to me, what is most meaningful. I love when kids graduate from college. I love going to their weddings. I love watching them sustain relationships. But I really love the walking billboards they are to God's goodness to them. And yeah, it's kind of fun. Somebody asked us the other day, how do you measure success? And I said, it's not really on a spreadsheet. I get really excited when I understand that the kids that have come through our programming are raising their own children. To me, that's the sign of success.
Yeah. Wow.
And then do you have a lot of kids who once, because this is something I actually was talking about with my college kids, of the cycle of poverty, because right now in America, we talk about we have the American dream and we're the richest country and we have all these opportunities, yet the rates of poverty are astronomical, even over here in the States, let alone a third world country or a country that finds itself with lack of resources. And this question of how do we break the cycle of poverty? And I want to say, I guess I want to ask, do you see a lot of these kids once they go through the program of the you said five steps, the holistic, do you see a lot of them break that cycle of poverty, or do a lot of kids end up finding themselves running back into it? Like, I guess I'm just more curious than anything.
Yeah, I always say that the high school and college program is a really elaborate discipleship program. At the end of it, they get these fancy college degrees. And in most of the countries where we serve, college-educated adults are less than 10% of the population. So
Wow.
It automatically gives them opportunity that prevents them from repeating the generational cycle of poverty. But way more effective than their college degree is the discipleship that they have gone through as they've gone through their schooling. And those healthy adults in their life are reinforcing to them, how do you manage your money? They're reinforcing the truth that the world tells us a little bit more money in any area and everything's going to get better. But we know that that's not true. A little bit more money does not make everything better. There are root causes to the choices we make. And those adults talk about that, deep healing and emotional health and spiritual strength and all the things that you need to be able to be a healthy, functioning adult. So no, we do not see kids return to poverty because they've just tasted something much healthier.
Yeah.
Now, I guess a follow-up question out of that, because I'm just thinking, like, you were talking about so many times that each kid needs a loving parent, but how many parents are, and I am learning this the hard way, of very many parents are not trained to handle trauma. And my wife was, because she had to go through a lot of training with foster care. But for me, instant family, oh boy, I'm learning how to build the airplane, fix the airplane, and make sure it doesn't explode while we're still trying to fly. Do you guys have resources for people to learn the holistic approach, even for like our own kids? And if we want to get into the foster and adoption world here, whether in the States or in the country that we find ourselves in?
Yes, absolutely. I can definitely tell your listeners about that. I think that though is the big shock. People typically take trauma training thinking about a particular population, like maybe they're classroom teachers, or they want to be foster parents, or they're coaches, or your youth group leaders. But you get into the content and you realize this actually works in every relationship I have. I mean, my husband and I employ the things that we've learned in trauma training all the time in our own marriage. Like one example would be like one of the things that we teach is about the power of redo. So when a child is from a hard place and they get asked even something simple like, did you finish your homework, or would you take this plate to the table, or whatever, they may have an exaggerated emotional reaction. And as a parent, we like to use carrots and sticks to change that. Like we either match them, suppress them, all kinds of things we can do. If we just stop for a second and said, would you like to have a chance to redo that? And we give a child an opportunity to rethink what their reaction is, most of the time they will redo it in a way that diffuses the conflict you're about to have. So in my marriage all the time, we were talking, we were on a walk the other day and he said something. I'm like, would you like a redo on that?
I like that.
It was
I
supposed
like
to be
that.
funny, but the truth was he did need a redo. And I could have responded or reacted to what he said, but I didn't want to. And we would have been off to the races and that wouldn't have been any fun. So
I feel like, just a lot of
trying to figure out-
friendships would not be destroyed if we just asked, would you like to try that again?
Yeah, I think I'm going to tell Janelle I need to be told that every day because I need a lot of redos.
Now, I'm just curious, now we're leaning into that. What other life lessons can our listeners take just from what you guys have found with this holistic approach?
I mean, there's lots of them. I was telling someone today at lunch about the power of yes. When we say yes to someone, their brain secretes the kind of hormones that makes them happy and attaches them to us. So we adopted an 11-year-old boy 7 years ago, and He was from a really difficult place, and he was always asking me questions like, "Can I have ice cream for breakfast?" Well, of course he cannot have ice cream for
Right.
breakfast.
Yeah,
But
no.
what I said to him is, yes, you can have ice cream after you finish your cereal, because what's important to me is that he had the right nutrients in his body, and what's important to him is that he hears me say yes. And so I can get what I want, he can get what he wants, in a way that's still mutually beneficial. So I try to take anytime the answer is going to be no, I try to reframe it into a yes that still fits within the boundaries or the perimeters that I've created around them. Like, you know, can I watch one more show? Well, yes, we can watch 10 more minutes and we'll have to finish the rest of it tomorrow. Just that power of negotiation, but giving them the ability to say yes. You can use that. I used it on a customer service agent a little bit ago, like wanting them to feel good and get attached to me, so then we could resolve the issue that I was calling in about. So
Right.
lots and lots of those principles. Trauma Free World digitized all of our training. Once upon a time, the training was all live, 3 consecutive days. You had to fly geographically to places where we were offering it. Now you can get Trauma Free World's training online. Just traumafreeworld.org, and there's all kinds of levels of training. You can do it 90-minute training, you can do the whole kit and caboodle, 6 weeks of it. You can customize it for whatever level of access you have to kids and what your interest might be.
Wow. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit.
Sorry, before you do
Sure.
that, I'm looking through this, man. This is unreal.
So you look through that.
Woo,
so
this is cool.
I want to know, we've had a global pandemic going on.
Yeah.
How much has that affected what you guys do? I'm sure it's affected you greatly, but like in what ways and how greatly?
Yeah, in August, The Lancet, the premier medical journal, published a report by the CDC in accordance with a bunch of other organizations that we now know because of COVID, there's a new orphan every 12 seconds in the world.
Wow.
So it's greatly increased the demand for the kind of work that we do, and while at the same time creating a lot of barriers and hurdles for staff. So I'm most proud of the ways in which I've seen orphan care organizations around the world innovate in order to continue to have access to kids. A lot of countries just immediately shut down orphanages and reunified families that were in no way, shape, or form prepared for reunification. And house parents and dorm parents became instant social workers as they were making home visits and trying to get engaged in families. And it's been really fun to watch the orphan care community rise to the occasion, but we have a lot more work in an already daunting field than ever before.
Wow. Yeah, that's got to be tough. So when they shut down, I mean, a lot of countries just like closed up their borders and everything. Did that affect how you guys could get help and support to the workers that you have in these countries?
Yeah, I mean, some of the systems still worked. Technology still worked. So we were able to have Zoom calls, and we were able to stay in face-to-face contact. The banking system still works, so we could continue to have resources flow to and from all the various countries. But the biggest barrier that we had is access to kids. In some places they would shut down, maybe somebody who was a weekly tutor or someone who was a weekly therapist or classroom teacher or whatever service somebody was providing. Those services, we had to rethink them. And different countries use different workarounds. But I'm excited to say, at least within our organization, we were able to keep track of all of our kids in real time, which that's what we're literally called to do. So it felt good to be able to continue to do that.
Yeah. Wow. So, you talk about kids, and we've talked about some resources and in this new present day and age of COVID and kind of getting used to how things operate in this world now. What are some different ways that listeners like Mark and I and other listeners of this podcast can support children or your ministry, either financially or I know that you guys offer to take trips so people can come down and actually see the work that you guys are doing. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. I'm fond of saying that we're not trying to grow an organization, we're trying to start a movement. So I would say to your listeners, if you have a relationship with someone who does orphan care in your county, in your state, in a country where your local church supports, I in all ways would support you to continue that relationship and to double down. But if you have no place to exercise that itch or to get to know how you might be able to help orphan and vulnerable children, then absolutely you can do it through Back2Back. We do a couple of easy ways I recommend for people at first. One of them is child sponsorship. So our child sponsorship is a little bit more elaborate than the average child sponsorship. It costs more money a month than typical child sponsorships cost. But for that increase in cost, we actually have a pretty significant relationship that we help you cultivate. Mm-hmm. We see your children every day. So we try to facilitate really regular and ongoing communication, and you can go visit your children that you sponsor. Certainly mission trips before COVID, we were taking about 2,500 people a year to the different sites around the world. Certainly that did not happen in 2020, and 2021 has been ramping up, but still much smaller numbers. But eventually I think we'll get back to around that size. And again, some mission trips out there, like the one I was describing in the beginning, aren't that great. They take advantage of local people. They create experiences that benefit the mission trip guest at the expense of the local or host culture.
Yeah, and that's why I never did like overseas mission trips, because that's how I felt. So we just never did them.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that do them wrong. What makes me sad is when you throw out the baby with the bathwater. Right. Just because some experiences are poor does not mean that the idea of short-term missions is bad. I mean, we can read in the book of Acts, Jesus sent his people out all the time on short-term experiences. I think the real key to do them in a way that's healthy and effective is if they're led by the local community. So that's, again, with our name Back2Back, it would be Haitians who tell us what the people are going to do, how they're going to do it, what they need, and we just listen and honor what the host culture actually wants and needs, and don't try to impose our own ideas or agendas or plans on them. So it's a little bit messier, but 25 years later, I can tell you, has been wildly effective for us in the communities that we've served.
Yeah, but how many like student ministries or adults or whatever would you say groups come, like, I wouldn't say come down because they can go all over the world, but about how many groups do you guys see per season?
Well, a little over 2,500 people travel a year with us.
Oh, that's awesome.
So a lot. But again, like the first day you're with us, we do pretty intense trauma training, because we wouldn't want someone to come in and interact with a child in a way that would be counter the way every other adult in their life is interacting with a child. So we do a lot of training of our teams. We highly control, because of child protection policies, the access they have to kids. And like, I'll just say, once upon a time, we let group members give gifts to kids. That's ridiculous. We now have, if they have anything that they'd like the child to have, we empower the adults that are in those children's lives every day of the week. And we say, here's some things that they want the kids to have. You can decide if you wrap it up for their birthday. You can decide if they get it, if they do well at school. Right. You can determine, and you can get credit, because the relationship we're most interested in is that child's primary relationship. Right. So there's a lot of things that we do that kind of are un-mission trip-esque, like no selfies and all that business. But in the end, I think it gives a more powerful experience to both the person that visited and certainly for the kids that we serve.
Yeah, that's cool.
Definitely.
Now, I asked this question of Brian and Jackie McCobb of Our Little Neighbors of Paraguay, and I know it, at first, it seems like a bit of a wrong question to ask, but I think it's one that a lot of, I would at least say, Americans think about. And, it's like we have listeners, like, obviously from all over South Africa, Asia, Europe, Canada, the U.S., but this is a question that I feel like some people ask about, is the fact of, why should we care about what's going on all over the world when our own country's having its own set of issues?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways I can answer that question. I think that some people don't need to care about it. I mean, I think people's unique callings are between them and Jesus. And sometimes the Lord calls us to help right in our backyard. And sometimes God calls us to help somewhere far on the other side of the world. And that's not really a decision that man can look on and make a judgment about. That's just between those persons and God. But because I certainly don't think that the Lord looks down on earth and sees country borders. But right. I do think sometimes when I was getting sassy and I would get asked that question, I would say, I would tell the story about there was a church that came to visit us and from a really affluent community, and they got off the bus, I remember, and I was like, my gosh, somebody did not tell them. They look like they're coming to a timeshare. Like, did somebody tell them this is a mission trip? And the pastor was last off, and I said something to him to that effect. And he said, this is my last week with these people. I'm leaving next week. I'm doing a church plant in the inner city of our city. This is my final assignment. I've been planting this church in the inner city about 18 months. I've been trying to get people to help me with it. Announcement week after week. Nobody's willing to help me. I cannot believe we got people to come on this trip. I think they were just excited about the location. And I was like, okay, it's going to be a great week. Anyway, we ended up having a fabulous week. They left. They went back to their city. Couple of months later, I went to that city and spoke at their church. And after the service, we had a lunch and we circled up and I said, tell me how your life has been since I last saw you. And the pastor came back to visit that Sunday and he said, tell her what's been going on. And the first guy was like, I now drive the bus on Wednesdays for this church plant. And the next person was like, yeah, I do Sunday morning Sunday school. And the other guy's like, I make the meal on for after the service. And they all went around having now accepted some kind of volunteer role in this inner city church plant. And I said, what happened? Like, did you guys all decide to do that? Or like, what happened? And this one lady said something so wise. She said, I didn't think I had anything to offer. And I didn't think I had anything in common. That's why I never said yes before. But once I got into another country and I realized I had lots more that I even understood I had to offer, and I had lots more in common with people I couldn't even speak their language. I knew I could be helpful in my own city. And we've had tens and thousands of people who have visited us over the last 25 years. And I have a feeling we've probably spurred on a lot of work in the U.S. as they've come back empowered from their international experience.
That's cool.
So
that's real.
I actually think we've done a lot in the U.S. I didn't even realize through them, but it's really, it's just between whoever it is and the God they serve, where they serve.
Wow. That's some pretty powerful stuff. I know that Janelle went on, my wife went on one of the back-to-back trips a long time ago, before I even met her, which was, so I think like 10 years ago or more. And she just absolutely rants and raves about it still to this day. And a lot of the stuff that she does is because of her experience that she had with back-to-back. So I know that you guys are doing great stuff, and it motivated her. Looking at your guys' website and stuff like that, I mean, it's amazing some of the stuff that you guys have going on there, and some of the countries you guys are reaching. What would you say is probably the best and most valuable thing that you have learned through this entire experience of back-to-back?
In a nutshell, probably
or long form.
Either or two nutshells.
You can do three if you want.
I mean, Jesus is the star of every story. That's probably what I would hang my hat on. Everything that's ever happened, it's because God made it happen. Yeah. Period. Like I think I think God honors humility. And I think the more that you humbly steward what he's given you, the more he gives you. In 2012, we were going to present at this Christian Alliance for Orphans, which is an annual conference for people in the orphan care space. This Todd and I were going to present this workshop called Taking Your Startup Nonprofit to a Mid-Size Organization. So that year we were about $5 million in budget. We had about 100 staff, and it'd been a long road between our savings account and 2 people and $5 million and 100 people. Mm-hmm. And so we thought we'd put together some of our cautionary tales and best practices. And we made 20 copies of our handouts, prayed that 10 people would come. When we opened the door for the workshop, we had hundreds of people walk in the door, and we were totally overwhelmed. So we stood on the stage and were like, hey, handouts aren't going to work today. So I'm going to put in a Google Drive, like everything I can possibly, every board policy manual, every HR manual, every Bible study, every training, anything you could possibly ever want, we'll just put on there. Anybody can have it. You can just have it for free, and just take our logo off it, put your logo on it. If it's not exactly what you want, maybe get you halfway where you're going, less time in front of a computer, more time in front of a kid. And within 18 months, we doubled in size, because I think that the spiritual principle you can't break is that you can't outgive God. And if you share what he's given you, he grows it. And so the whole Jesus is the star of the story is probably the chief summary statement. But if I had to get a second little corollary statement, it'd probably be that people are always worth it. Kids from hard places, they tend to push you away, and just pursuit at all costs. They're always worth it. I've seen a lot of miraculous stories of kids turning around, but it was because somebody demonstrated extraordinary love to them.
Yeah. Wow. Mark, you got anything else?
I got nothing, man. I'm more so sitting here thinking through my own parenting, just going, man, I got to redo a couple things. Can I get a redo?
Well, I'm taking advice from you already. Is there anything else that maybe you've wanted to mention? We haven't asked you a certain question, or something that we may have missed that you would like to speak to right now?
Oh, I think maybe only just that if there's any listener that's thinking, I wish I would have done that when I was 25, or we have a really neat story. It just released, I'm not sure exactly when this will be aired, but it just released here mid-October. We have a partnership with the Tim Tebow Foundation. So on all of their social media platforms, they just put out a video, a story about a family that's in our Back2Back extended family who they're retired, and they just adopted a 3-year-old with special needs from a children's home that we have in Mexico that's solely for children with special needs. They adopted this little girl, and what's happening in their family it's jaw-dropping. And I think they thought to themselves, there's no way God would want to do something like that through us at this point in our life. And he is. So I would just say it's never too late.
Wow. Okay. I'm just going to echo that. Mark and I started this podcast 2 years ago, and it was two guys in a coffee shop.
Two dudes in a coffee shop.
That said, hey, we want to share and to help Christians grow and find guests like you, Beth, that have that God's using them for powerful things and ministries across the world. And we want to connect not only with people like you, but also connect our listeners with people and organizations like you. And God has used it, a steel worker and I'm a
website guy,
a website designer to bring about being able to make connections with people, and it's amazing things, and it's never too late. And God seems to use the dumb-witted, I would say I am.
Did you just call Beth dumb-witted?
No, not Beth. That's why I said. That's why I said that's just me.
I did.
But he seems to use the people that are the least expected to do some of the biggest things.
But it's because they said yes.
Because they said yes, right? The power of yes. That's what we're going to go with.
So we're going with for this episode, power of yes.
The power of yes and the redo.
So
you can have a redo by using the power of yes. I'm all about
Amen.
that.
I love it. Well, hey, real quick, Beth, where can listeners learn more about you, either sponsor the ministry, sponsor a child, learn more about going on a mission trip and all that kind of fun stuff?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Back2Back's website is back2back.org. And we're on all the social media platforms, so people can find out more about us there. For me personally, certainly I am present on the Back2Back website, but I also have a website called recklessfaith.com, and that's where all kinds of materials that I've produced find their home.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure we put those in the show notes in case anybody forgets. That way we don't forget, and you can be found. And I know our listeners are some very giving and very loving listeners, and so I'm sure a bunch of people will be wanting to know more information about that and how to get in there. But is there
That'd be great.
Anything else that you want to throw at our listeners before we move on to the fun fact of the day?
No, I think that's all.
All right, Beth, thank you so much for being on with us today.
But we can't let her go
yet. We can't let you go without giving you a fun fact, because that's just what we've always done.
So you ready for your fun fact,
Let's
Fuller?
do the fun fact.
Time for Fun Facts with Fuller.
That final laugh, man.
That's the little segue, Beth, that we had for our fun facts, and that came about in season 2, I believe, is when we did that. Before it was just like,
I think it was before season 2, like
was
in
it?
season 1 or something.
It was before that. It was just, hey, let's hear a fun fact. Okay, here's a fun fact. But then we decided we needed a little something, a little break there.
So that's Janelle and the kids, by the way.
That's my wife and my kids right there that did that. So
Precious.
So the fun fact of today, did you know, everybody, that people started wearing pajamas, originally spelled Pyjamas.
Wait, what?
Instead of nightgowns, so they'd be prepared to run outside in public during World War I air raids in England. So that's where PJs came from.
So your PJs were actually your go-go clothes.
They're the go-go, run out the door clothes.
Well, okay, so my fun fact, when I went to college, it was a very conservative college. So they always had to warn us about when our fire drills were happening because we had to run out of our dorms. And one of the dudes missed the memo, and he was in the shower, and homeboy came running out with a towel because he thought it was a real fire drill because it was Saturday morning. And no, someone burnt popcorn. It's out the whole fire alarm on the whole campus. And so homeboy came running out with just a towel. It was a funny. Well, we didn't do demerits.
Oh well.
But
Pensacola Christian College.
It was a funny situation. But either way, Christian schools, they warned you so you could have your go-go clothes on in case the fire alarm went off.
Exactly. Well, again, thanks for everybody for tuning in and listening to Beth from Back to Back. You can go to back2back.org and all the other special places that Beth tells us about.
Recklessfaith.com.
There you go. Yeah, I'm glad you wrote it down. So check Beth out there on those platforms and get involved with that ministry. You can also reach out to us at realtalkchristianpodcast.com. Everything that you could ever want for
all
us
the things
is there.
Even the store.
It's all there. The store, the links to the episodes, the email account, the phone number, everything's right there. You can just go there. You can also call us at 574-400-5352. Mark, am I missing anything?
Normally, this is me doing the runoff, but you're doing the rundown, and I'm here for it,
That's
man.
because I'm not caffeinated. I don't know why.
I'm not caffeinated either, man. I'm drinking LaCroix. But either way, just like always, guys, we are so glad and thankful and excited that you've joined with us. We have a lot of new listeners to the podcast. We've been growing every single day. So feel free to reach out to us and connect with us. We joke all the time. Yeah, you can text us, call us, DM us. But guess what?
We
actually respond
every
back.
time.
Now, sometimes it's a little slow, and sometimes we're not so great about it. But we've been doing a lot better recently. So hit us up, hit Beth up. But Beth, it was a pleasure meeting you and having this conversation.
We appreciate it.
It was great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, guys. Well, hey, until next time,
take it easy.